I'm Charlotte McLeod with the Investing News Network, and here today with me is Lobo Tiggre, founder and editor of Independent Speculator. Thanks so much for being here online with me today.
Happy to be back with you, Charlotte.
Yes, and we have a lot to talk about today. I think, though, where we should start is with the US election. We had some long days of vote counting, but ultimately it's now been called for Joe Biden. What does that mean for gold, if anything?
Well, one should say first that the media calling the election isn't an official result. That said, it does look like, sorry, Trump fans, I mean, it does look like Biden will win. I don't think the legal challenges will go anywhere. The recounts have a better shot of tipping the balances, but I don't think a very good shot still. It looks like Biden's probably going to end up winning this. So that really leaves the big question now, the US Senate, because there's a big difference between Biden in the White House and the Democrats in control of both the House and the Senate, enabling a much more aggressive agenda, which would have a bigger impact for resource investors and everybody else as well, versus a divided Senate. And it's really kind of funny how when it looked like Biden was ahead, but everybody thought the Republicans were going to, no problem, keep the Senate. Stocks were up, and then suddenly it didn't look so sure, and the Democrats started taking more seats in the Senate. Stocks started going down. People were worried, and so now the question is, what's going to happen to Mr. Market of 2 months of nail biting until the decision? Because it's going to be 2 months before that runoff election in Georgia, and until then, big swings could go either way.
Yeah, that was actually my next question is what can we expect over the next 2 months? Is it just going to be, we're going to have to be ready for that volatility in the market? Because as you mentioned, it just because the media calls a victory for Biden doesn't mean that's the case. And it does seem like Trump will be trying his best to hang on. So I guess we're preparing for volatility.
Well, that sort of goes without saying, but the question is, will it get out of control? I think it's hard to sit here with a straight face and say, oh yes, well, Doug, my friend Doug Casey likes to say, oh, we're headed for a revolution or a civil war. These people, red and blue, they hate each other, and things in the real world seem to never be quite as bad as we fear they are, or as good, right? You look at some big change coming, and you think it's going to be the end of the world, and it kind of isn't. Or you think everything's going to be great now, right? Oh, the good guys won. But somehow things keep on going as they always do in Washington and other capitals. So if I can be the voice of reason here, or try, I don't want to self-anoint myself. I think it's don't listen to extreme rhetoric. No offense to my dear friend Doug Casey. But I'm not expecting the end of the world here. I don't expect a revolution in the streets. Anything could happen, but I think most people are of goodwill. Most people want to see, an honest result, and most people will abide by what, at least appears to be that. So I'm not expecting too much fireworks, but markets hate uncertainty. It's interesting as you and I speak. I'm not sure when this will go live, but it's Thursday afternoon. Markets are down, gold's up. No big changes. Everybody's all excited about the vaccine earlier, and now, well, winter's still coming. So a lot of uncertainty out there. I think we rig for stormy weather. It's not a very breathtakingly original thing to say, but my contribution will be is don't panic in large friendly letters. I don't think the world's about to come to an end before January.
Okay, and aside from the election, you mentioned we had that vaccine news earlier this week. Gold took a hit after that news came out. What is your take on that price activity?
Well, this is sort of my claim to fame, my 15 minutes of fame right now, because I mentioned that possibility amongst other things as a possible scenario, and I did say that if we had some great vaccine news, and please, all you experts out there, don't beat me up for saying it's great vaccine news. I don't want to quibble about whether this is a normal vaccine or not, or the medical issues. I'm not a doctor. I'm not an epidemiologist. But the market saw this as great vaccine news. And that's what we as investors have to deal with, right? So, and 90% effectiveness is way beyond what all the experts were expecting. So this is a significant thing. People are calling it a game changer and so on. I'm a little more skeptical. It's my job to be a skeptic, right? Even if that number is real, remember that this thing has to be kept at like minus 80 degrees or something. It takes 2 doses. It's logistically challenged. And it will be at best months before it's rolled out. So we still have winter to deal with. And I think that's what Mr. Market is realizing now is, oh yeah, great news, but you know what? It's not today news. But back to the significance for most of our audience, I think on the gold thing, it was predictable because there was a narrative throughout the year, much of the year, at least since March, that it was the COVID-19 situation that was pushing the fear button and pushing people into gold and silver. I don't think that's true at all. We probably talked about that before, how gold's been on a rise for years now, really, and on a more marked rise since the Powell pivot in late 2018. So this started way before COVID-19. And maybe the COVID panic is an extra boost, a tailwind, but the disappearance of the tailwind doesn't undo the fundamental situation for the market. So I remain extremely bullish. I'm not worried about any number of vaccines. Sure, short-term hit, knee-jerk reaction, no surprise, but the fundamentals are still on our side here.
Right. And one thing I wanted to ask you to do is remind us of that bigger picture for gold beyond the election, beyond COVID-19, and what other vaccine news might be coming. Would you mind doing
Sure.
that for a
Well,
moment?
yeah, well, I, I don't want to go back on myself because I just talked about how the COVID-19 thing is just a tailwind, but it is a significant tailwind. So I don't see it as a game changer. I don't see it as the cause of anything that's going on, but it did bring forward some of the things that we might not have seen for some time. The Fed was already on its way to zero, and really the only change that COVID-19 has brought on is the Fed's great reassurances that it will stay at zero and maybe more asset purchases than they would have otherwise done. But the Fed was already headed in that direction. The big change that COVID-19 did bring, and I think forward rather than onto the table at all, was more fiscal stimulus. I think the economy was not as strong as people thought, not the US. The global economy certainly has been showing a great deal of weakness. And central bankers and governments around the world were already, getting ready to prime the pump. And so COVID-19 just sort of accelerated it, made it bigger, pulled it forward. But I think all of that was happening anyway. And I also think that the tail of COVID-19, that inverse square root sign as opposed to the V recovery, I think that stays with us for a long time. Even if this winter in the Northern Hemisphere turns out to be much less fear-inducing than feared, there will still be more fear. There will still be more trouble. There are still more layoffs ahead. There's still lots of trouble ahead. And that stays with us. Does it normalize to where it would have been without COVID-19? I don't know. But I think that we were in trouble anyway. And this has just added to it. And the long story short here, though, is trouble means more government help, which is good for monetary metals.
Okay, I think that gives us a pretty good picture of where gold is at right now. I do want to talk a little bit about other trends that are going on in the gold space, and mergers and acquisitions seems to be one that's gaining speed right now. We had Yamana Gold and Monarch Gold, Endeavor Mining, Teranga Gold said they're in talks. How do you think we'll see activity develop in that arena?
But I'm glad you bring this up because the idea of the takeover, right? You have these bigger companies, they have to acquire more ounces since they haven't been exploring for years, or they mine themselves out of business. So they have to go shopping at some point. And there's a lot of juniors out there that are proving up some pretty great discoveries. So, the important thing about this is that it happens whether or not gold prices go higher, whether or not the COVID-19 thing ends or not. It doesn't matter. None of these things matter. Even gold prices could go down. Have to happen depending on the situation. The takeover offer can be 30% more, 50% more, in some cases 100% more. So, and a day late is too late on these things, right? Once the offer's been made and the stock jumps up to some arbitrage level below the takeover offer, it's too late in most cases. So this is something that people can use to make money almost regardless of what happens if you can correctly identify takeover targets. Now, I've been saying this actually for some time. There's a takeover report on my website, independentspeculator.com. If anybody wants to look, it's free. But the expectation of this big wave of takeovers has been put off by the COVID-19 situation. I mean, I'm the due diligence guy. That's my claim to fame. And I've been home almost all year because, you know what, even if the companies would invite me to their properties, which hasn't been happening all year, the last thing you want is some outsider to come in and then the villagers get COVID-19. They blame you, the explorer, even if it wasn't you, even if I didn't carry a germ, just the fact that a foreigner was there and then there were people getting sick, it's enough to cause social relations issues for years and years down the road. So not a lot of invitations this year. The same applies to the due diligence guys for the bigger companies. You don't want to send a due diligence team into some remote community and then have an outbreak, or you don't want your people to get sick. So we've seen, I think, less M&A activity than we would have. You'll see some well-known projects are getting some love, and some people, I guess, are doing it with precautionary measures anyway. But I do think actually this is a good situation for anybody new to the table here, because it gives you time to get in, to research which companies you think are the best takeover targets. We can help with that, of course. But it's good. There's pent-up demand. It has to happen. It's one of these when, not if questions, and it's one that you want to be in front of.
Aside from that, are there any other trends you would recommend investors look at to potentially find some ways to profit?
Well, there are a couple. Yeah, I appreciate you asking that question. One is, my very favorite form of speculating in the junior space, and that is what I call the pre-production sweet spot. Actually, I didn't coin that phrase. It was already called that. It's just one I have adopted, the PPSS. And that is when the company makes the transition from, exploring, developing, building a mine to production. And it's another free report you can download on my website, the pre-production sweet spot. Independentspeculator.com, absolutely free. We won't spam you with a gazillion advertisements if you download it. But really, this is one of my claims to fame in this space, is that as far as I know, I'm the first one to measure this, to put out numbers, to do research, put out statistics on this. And the increase that you see in this, spending money in holes in the ground, pulling money out of holes in the ground, it's more significant than most people realized before. And it's the average of all the cases I've found, which are about 115, is on the order of a double, with the better ones, almost on par with a discovery, 7, 8, 9 times over your initial investment. So again, the beauty of this is we don't need higher gold prices or silver prices to make pre-production sweet spot plays work out. They do tend to do better in bull markets, but they work even on average. In bear markets, they don't all work. You still have to do your due diligence. But it's I think, a fantastic opportunity for people who want to balance risk and reward. Maybe it's not the same as if brand new discovery sending the stock to the moon. But everybody can see who's building a mine. And a good 95% of the people who start building their mine finish it. So the odds of failure are much lower in this area.
Yeah, the numbers that you put together always do amaze me when I sit down to look at those. I wondered, I know obviously you're more focused on the smaller companies. Is there a case right now for looking at major miners? Is there a place for them in somebody's portfolio? Especially as now we're starting to see more quarterly results come out, so we know how they're doing.
Sure, I absolutely say yes. There is actually two different cases. One is that as we're really just starting, I think, this major sea change in the gold and silver space. And this is attracting generalist investors who haven't been interested before. Famously, Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway bought Barrick Gold. I don't think that means Buffett has changed his own mind about gold, but it is interesting for people who are not gold bugs to see, oh, look at those gold miners, look at gold prices. Those guys are gushing cash right now. So in that space, there's absolutely a case to be made for buying these stocks. And if gold didn't have to double or triple or anything crazy, just goes back over 2,000, heads to 2,100, I think you'll see a major move into these household names. So you're not talking 10 baggers here, but you're also talking pretty low risk and significant gains. So I think that's one case. The other one is that, we think of the juniors as being the source of the hockey sticks, right? Going overnight vertical. But as we saw in the meltdown last March, the majors delivered, 1, 2, 3 times your money. I mean, just amazing gains. And we've seen this before, 2008. We've seen this in 2016, actually, that first head fake rally when gold had bottomed and really start it up again, you saw that some of the biggest companies in the space delivered within months the kind of gains you would expect of a junior exploration company. So that the second scenario is if there is another market crash, if there's another market meltdown, if winter comes and scares the bejesus out of Wall Street and everything goes on sale, gold will get hit too, silver will get whacked as well, the stocks will take it even harder. And that will be a spectacular buying opportunity. And the majors would be the lowest risk way to play that with still significant gains. I mean, and I'm not talking 20, 30%, double digits. I'm talking triple digit gains.
Okay. Now, we've talked a lot about gold. We all love to hear about gold, but I'm also interested in what other commodities you're looking at right now. And I think especially, we've talked about how the election could impact gold. How could it impact other commodities, assuming we had a Biden presidency?
Right. So several things there. And one is that there is a fear that a Biden administration would be bad for mining. There's an unfortunate headline put out by one of your competitors about how a Biden administration would be bad for gold stocks. Not some gold stocks, not US gold stocks, just gold stocks. And I got a ton of email from readers saying, is gold in trouble? Should we sell our gold stocks? And the answer is no, right? Biden is not, even if he does become president, he's not going to be president of the world. This is potentially a US risk. Now, I would say that a Biden administration, I could see it, trying to undo all the help that the Trump administration did to the resource sector, and Trump did for all his foibles, he did help. His EPA was a completely different thing. You talk to anybody working in the U.S. and they'll tell you that the Trump EPA was much more cooperative and a different beast to work with. So that goes into reverse if Biden takes over. So if you're looking for exploration permits or you're looking for permits to build a mine, I would expect that to be significantly harder under a Biden administration. Now, that's just the US. But also, I would not assume that it's bad for all mining. The Biden-Harris agenda is so green. And to do that, to make the changes they want to do, there are resources required. The so-called battery metals, it's more than just metals, of course, but the so-called battery metals, they have to be mined. And everybody gets that it's dangerous to rely entirely on foreign sources for critical elements. So that's one thing: is don't assume that a Biden administration would necessarily be bad for all mining. And the more specific one, and I know you were going to ask about this, so we'll just jump to the next question, is uranium. Right? It's sort of been a foregone conclusion that the left, the environmental lobby in the U.S. was anti-uranium, and that's more or less been true by and large. But there's really been, I think, a tidal shift, and it seems to me, just anecdotally, looking at the flow of headlines that come across my desk, it really seems like the tidal shift is imperceptible at the moment when it stops rising and starts falling. But the more it keeps going, the momentum builds and the faster it goes. And the headlines I'm seeing, it's not just, it used to be one a month, then one a week. It's not even one a day anymore. There's multiple headlines a day about how small nuclear can help, decarbonize the world, how advanced nuclear is safer, how small modular reactors are, both safer, cheaper, more efficient. Just the headlines are coming fast and furious. And the Biden-Harris campaign had it in their platform that advanced nuclear was part of the solution. And this is one of their 4 top priorities. So it's not just, me, Lobo, saying, oh, yeah, I think that the Biden and Harris would do this. Any politician, his lips are moving. I'm not sure that means the truth's coming out. But they are saying this is a top priority and it needs minerals. And one particular way to get to reduce carbon emissions soon is going more nuclear. So I think you need to look at this on a case-by-case basis. And I would not assume that a Biden administration is bad for all mining, certainly not in the world, but not even in the US.
Well, and on the note of uranium, I think we certainly on our site saw a lot of excitement toward the beginning of the year. Maybe it's petered off a little bit and will reignite again soon. But I wonder, we had under Trump the Section 232 investigation. We had some budget plans. Where does that all go in this new presidency possibility? Do they take that and put their own spin on it? What do you think there?
Well, hard to say. I could
Yeah.
very easily see, I can armchair psychologize Biden here. I could see him wanting to undo everything Trump did, just to make sure to distinguish himself. And any idea Trump had, that has to be bad because it was Trump's idea. I could also see something that makes sense. And um, I guess let me rewind a little bit. I personally don't think it's too terribly dangerous to rely on our good friends north of the border for our supply of uranium, or our good friends down under either. I don't think either of them is going to put a stranglehold on the US and freeze us out in the winter if we don't play nice. Um, though they do have that round bacon up there, which is kind of strange. But anyway, the point is that I don't actually buy the national security argument for why the U.S. has to mine its own uranium. That having been said, we basically don't mine any of our own uranium, and I can see, just makes sort of a precautionary sense to have some domestic supply. You don't ever want to put all your eggs in one basket. You don't want to be stuck where you have no option but to rely on others. So I could actually see bipartisan support. And in fact, I think I've seen some headlines recently about Trump's budget proposal for that uranium stockpile going forward with bipartisan support now. Now, does that change if there's a Biden presidency? I don't know. Maybe it becomes the Biden uranium stockpile and then it's fine. It goes ahead. I really can't tell you what's going to happen there. I can tell you that in general, I don't speculate on political outcomes. I'm not willing to buy a stock, which is already highly speculative, on the chance that a politician might do what he promises. That's just not my cup of tea. But it doesn't matter because uranium prices, even though uranium's had a great year, are still well below the cost of production. Long-term contracts have rolled off. There are very few left. And it's not good enough if you're a utility that has dozens of plants and you have a year's outlook ahead of you, what your plans are. It's not good enough to just say, oh, well, we can buy it cheaper on the spot market. That's fine. We'll just keep buying. No, you need a secure, stable supply. So it's not just about price. It's about securing a years long contract where you know what you'll get. You can put in your spreadsheet, this is our cost. And you can't do that if you're buying on the spot market. So I think this is really the ball to keep our eyes on, not Section 232, not uranium stockpiles, not even a more pro-nuclear Biden-Harris administration. None of that is guaranteed. What is guaranteed is that you can't put, gasoline or coal or, solar panels in your nuclear power plant and expect it to work. You've got to have uranium for years and decades to come. You've got to have uranium. It can't be supplied at current prices. And I do believe we are close to seeing that change more significantly. And finally, I've talked long on this, but I got to say, the fact that uranium prices have gone sideways has been very distressing to the bugs that just want to go up and up and up. But the fact that it hasn't gone down, I think, is even more important. It tells you that the secondary supply that knocked uranium prices so low, so far below the cost of production, I think that's gone. The uranium prices would not remain at their currently relatively elevated levels if new secondary supply was still flooding the market. So if the secondary supply is gone and it can't be mined at current prices, I think that not if but when question is coming close to an answer.
Okay, so we just need to be a little bit more patient on uranium, which I hope we can all do. As we finish up, are there any final words of advice that you would leave with investors as we head toward the end of the year? Sounds like it's going to be full of turmoil. What do you suggest?
Well, one is to tie into our previous conversation. We didn't talk about other specific minerals or metals that I'm looking at, uranium, but also I do like copper and nickel. And amongst the battery metals, those are my favorites. Lithium is not rare. The rare earths are not rare. Cobalt's problematic, but I really like copper and nickel. And if I had to pick one, copper the most. And I'm not buying yet. because I'm worried about more economic turmoil this winter. Winter is coming, right? I want to see what happens with that first, but that's one thing to keep in mind. As far as general advice, at a time like this, you've got, such deeply entrenched sides and opposition. It's an environment that's really ripe for extreme rhetoric, and people are going to come out with all kinds of crazy, bold predictions and dire warnings and all this stuff. And so my one general word advice would be to be skeptical. Be skeptical of all the claims that you hear, all the bold predictions you hear. Try to focus on the trends, things that are actually happening now, and not what people promise is going to happen or what they're sure is going to happen. And by the way, the number one target for your skepticism needs to be yourself and the people you agree with, because those are the people that get in through your defenses. If you disagree with somebody, you're already blocking and filtering everything they say, and so you're more likely to be careful about anything they send in your way. But your friends, your allies, the people you agree with, they can slip sneaky ideas or incorrect ideas right under your screens without you noticing if you're not on your guard. So please be skeptical. It's a cardinal virtue of all speculators. It really should be of investors. But at times like this, I think you need it more than ever.
Okay, well, that sounds like a good note to end on. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts as usual.
Thank you, Charlotte.
Once again, I'm Charlotte McLeod with the Investing News Network, and this is Lobo Tiggre.